There's a certain kind of person who sees family dinner, Sunday 6 p.m., appear on their calendar and feels their chest tighten. Not excitement, something closer to dread, and they hate themselves for it. Because what kind of person dreads seeing their own family? Here's the thing nobody tells you. That dread isn't a character flaw. It's not proof that you're cold, or broken, or incapable of love. It's your nervous system remembering something your conscious mind has tried to forget. Today we're going somewhere most conversations about family gatherings refuse to go, past the surface level advice about setting boundaries and managing expectations. We're going to the wound underneath, the roles you never chose, the grief you've never been allowed to name, and the science that explains why walking through your childhood door can undo years of growth in a matter of seconds. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. You're 32, maybe 40, you've built a life, you have a job, maybe a career you're proud of. You've spent years in therapy untangling the knots in your head. You've learned to set boundaries with friends who drain you. You know who you are now. And then Thanksgiving rolls around. You drive to your parents' house. You park in that same driveway. You take a breath, you walk through that door, and within 15 minutes, your mother makes a comment about your weight. Your father asks why you're still renting instead of buying. Your sister brings up that thing you did in high school. The thing everyone laughs about except you. And suddenly, you're not 32 anymore. You're 14, defensive, small, shrinking into yourself like you used to. What just happened? Most people blame introversion. Oh, you're just drained by social interaction. You need to recharge. But that's not quite it. Because here's what's strange. You can spend 4 hours with your closest friends and feel energized. You can talk to strangers at a party and feel fine. But 30 minutes with your family leaves you hollow. The difference isn't about how much social energy you have. It's about whether you chose to be there. There's a name for what happens when you're forced into social situations, not by choice but by guilt, duty, or expectation. Obligatory socialization, and your nervous system responds to it very differently than voluntary connection. When the interaction feels forced, your brain reads it as confinement, the same stress response that fires when you're trapped somewhere you don't want to be. It activates at family gatherings you didn't want to attend. Your body doesn't know the difference between I have to be here and I'm stuck here. To your nervous system, they're the same thing. But the exhaustion you feel after family gatherings, it goes deeper than social battery, much deeper. Every family is a system, and every system assigns roles. Think about yours. There's probably a golden child, the one who can do no wrong. There's a black sheep, the one who carries the family's disappointments. There's a peacekeeper, the one who smooths over conflict at the cost of their own voice. There's an invisible one, the one who learned early that taking up space wasn't safe. These roles aren't chosen, they're inherited, often before you're old enough to understand what's happening. And here's the part that might explain everything you've been feeling. When you return to your family, no matter how much you've grown, no matter how different your life is now, the system pulls you back into your assigned position. You walk in as the adult you've become. The system sees the child you were. I want you to think about the last family gathering you attended. Think about the moment you felt yourself shrink. Maybe it was a comment. Maybe it was a look. Maybe it was just the way someone said your name. That shrinking you felt, it wasn't weakness. It wasn't proof that you haven't healed enough. It was neuroscience. The neural pathways that formed in childhood, the ones connected to your family relationships, they run deeper than almost anything else in your brain. They were created when your brain was still soft, still being shaped by everything around it. Those pathways don't disappear just because you moved out. They don't fade just because you've done the work. They wait dormant until something triggers them. The smell of your mother's cooking, the sound of your father's footsteps, the particular way afternoon light falls through those windows. Your brain receives these signals and thinks, I know this place, I know who I am here, I know how to survive here. And it pulls up the old patterns automatically without asking your permission. Your childhood home isn't just a building, it's a time machine wired directly into your nervous system. This brings us to something that might change how you see yourself. There are two versions of you, the one your family created and the one you actually are. Your assigned self is the role you were given, the responsible one who had to grow up too fast, the difficult one whose emotions were always too much, the quiet one whose needs were never quite urgent enough to address. This version of you was written before you had any say in the story. Your authentic self is who you've been becoming in all the spaces where your family isn't watching. It's the person who emerges when you're free, the one who knows what you actually feel, what you actually need, what actually matters to you. The pain of family gatherings lives in the collision between these two selves. You walk through that door as your authentic self, and within minutes the system starts compressing you back into your assigned self, back into the box they built for you decades ago. That compression hurts, not because you're weak, but because you've spent years expanding beyond it. And then there's the performance. Every family gathering requires you to manage more than just yourself. You're calculating which topics to avoid, which jokes to laugh at, even when they're not funny, which questions to deflect before they land, which version of yourself to present so the dinner stays peaceful. This is exhausting work. Your brain's self-control center goes into overdrive. You're running a constant calculation in the background. What will happen if I say this? How will they react if I do that? What's the safest version of myself to be right now? Think about the last time you left a family gathering. You probably felt drained, emptied, and even though you barely moved from your chair. That exhaustion isn't physical. It's the cost of performing for people who knew you before you learned how to perform. The people who remember when you didn't fit, when you were strange, when you were different. Part of you is terrified that if you stop performing for even a moment, they'll see through everything you've built. There's something else happening at that dinner table, something primal. So, how's work? Your uncle asks, but what you hear is, are you successful yet? Are you enough yet? Are you seeing anyone? Your aunt adds. Translation, why aren't you married like your cousin? What's wrong with you? You look different, someone says, and your whole body tenses, because you know what that means. This is comparison, and your brain processes it in a way that might surprise you. When you feel like you're falling short, when you sense that you're being measured against your siblings or cousins, or some imaginary version of who you should be, your brain activates the same regions it uses for physical pain, the exact same ones. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between your cousin bought a house and you're still renting and someone actually hurting you. The pain is processed identically. Except physical pain fades, the sting of comparison follows you home. It sits with you while you try to sleep, or it whispers to you for days afterward. This is why a single comment at a family gathering can ruin your entire week. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's treating the wound as real, because to your nervous system, it is real. And then there's the boundary problem. In your regular life, you've probably learned to protect yourself. You don't answer work emails at midnight. You've stopped saying yes to things that drain you. You've gotten better at knowing where you end and others begin. But family treats boundaries like suggestions, or worse, like personal attacks. Questions that would be inappropriate from anyone else become expected. Your privacy isn't respected, it's reframed as concern. Your choices aren't yours, they're family matters that everyone gets to weigh in on. And every boundary violation triggers something deep, because boundaries aren't just preferences, they're how you maintain a sense of control over your own life. When someone crosses them repeatedly, they're not just being annoying, they're threatening your sense of agency, your ability to determine your own existence. Your body responds to, "My mother won't stop asking about my love life," the same way it responds to genuine threat. It doesn't know these are different things, it just knows something is wrong. But here's where we need to go somewhere most conversations about family gatherings never reach. We need to talk about grief. Not the grief of losing someone, the grief of never having something in the first place. The grief of watching other families at restaurants, laughing easily, touching each other casually, enjoying each other's company, and wondering what that would feel like. The grief of the childhood you deserved but didn't get. The parents who couldn't give you what you needed. The sibling relationships that never became friendships. The holiday memories that other people seem to have but you somehow missed. There's a name for this, ambiguous loss, and it's one of the most painful kinds of grief because there's nothing concrete to mourn. There's no funeral, no socially acceptable period of sadness, just this persistent ache, this sense that something is missing, this longing for a version of family that you've seen in movies, like in other people's lives but never in your own. When you dread family gatherings, part of that dread might be this grief. Every holiday becomes a reminder of the gap between what you have and what you needed. You're not just surviving the dinner, you're being confronted again with evidence of what your family couldn't give you. And you've never been allowed to mourn it, because how do you grieve something you never had? But here's what I need you to understand, and this is where the story changes. Those neural pathways, the ones that pull you back into old patterns the moment you smell your mother's cooking, the ones that make you 14 again when your father uses that tone, they are not permanent. They feel permanent. They've been there so long they seem like part of who you are. But brains change, even adult brains, even yours. Every time you respond differently than the old pattern expects, every time you hold on to your authentic self, when the system is trying to compress you back into your assigned role, you're building something new, you're laying down different neural pathways, you're teaching your brain a new story about who you are in the presence of your family. This doesn't happen overnight. It's not about deciding to be different and suddenly being different. It's slow, it's uncomfortable. It requires you to feel the pull of the old patterns and choose not to follow them, again and again. But it's possible. The science is clear on this. You are not trapped in the version of yourself your family created. So what do you actually do with all of this? How do you walk into that house when you know what's waiting for you? First, give yourself permission to feel what you feel. Dreading family gatherings doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you someone whose nervous system learned something about survival, and that learning doesn't just disappear because it's inconvenient. The guilt you feel about not wanting to go, that guilt isn't evidence that you should force yourself. It's often evidence of the very dynamics that made these gatherings hard in the first place. Healthy families don't produce adults who dread coming home. Second, get strategic. This isn't about avoiding your family forever. It's about giving yourself a fighting chance. Shorter visits, your own car, so you can leave when you need to. A hotel room instead of sleeping in your old bedroom, so you have somewhere that belongs only to you. A friend who knows to call at 7 p.m. with a fake emergency if you text a certain word. These aren't signs of weakness, they're tools, and you're allowed to use them. Third, practice holding on to yourself. Before you walk through that door, remind yourself who you actually are. Not the role they gave you, not the story they wrote about you, and the person you've been building in all the spaces where you're free. That person doesn't have to disappear just because you're surrounded by people who only see an old version of you. You can set boundaries, you can redirect conversations, you can excuse yourself when you need air. You can choose not to engage with the topics designed to shrink you. You don't owe anyone access to parts of yourself that feel sacred. And finally, remember this. You don't owe anyone your mental health, not even family, especially not family. The idea that blood automatically means safety, that shared DNA creates an obligation to endure pain, this is a story. It's not a law of nature. It's not a universal truth. It's just a story we've been told so many times that we forgot to question it. Some people find that limited contact is what saves their relationship with their family. Smaller doses, fewer hours, careful choices about which gatherings to attend and which to skip. Some people discover that redefining family time works. Coffee with a favorite cousin instead of the whole circus. A phone call instead of a weekend visit. Quality over obligation. Some people make the harder choice, the one nobody wants to talk about. And that choice, made consciously and carefully, is also valid. Whatever you choose it on purpose. Not from guilt, not because you're afraid of what people will say, and not because you think you should want something you've never actually wanted. Choose from a clear understanding of what you can give without losing yourself. Choose from self-knowledge, not self-abandonment. The people who truly love you will make room for your boundaries. They might struggle at first. They might not understand right away, but genuine love doesn't demand that you shrink. And the people who can't accept your boundaries, who need you to stay in your assigned role, who punish you for becoming someone they didn't write, maybe they're part of the very system that made this so hard. So if you've ever felt guilty for dreading family gatherings, if you've ever wondered what's wrong with you for not enjoying what everyone else seems to enjoy, hear this. There is nothing wrong with you. Your body is remembering something real. Your nervous system is trying to protect you based on everything it learned when you were too young to protect yourself. The dread you feel isn't dysfunction, it's information. You are not broken, you are not cold, you are not incapable of love. You are someone who learned early that family doesn't always mean safety, and you've been navigating that truth ever since. That's not weakness, that's survival. The place you once called home may never feel like home again, but you can build a home inside yourself, a place where your authentic self is welcome, where your boundaries are real, where your grief is allowed to exist. And from that inner home, you get to decide how much contact, how many visits, how close you let them get. That choice has always belonged to you. Maybe now you finally have the understanding to make it.